Motion carries. So a few updates for you. We want to welcome the Butler College of Education. We have an audience full of teachers, and I'll tell you, some of these educators are might try to grab you as you walk out the door. Look at Scott Bess already, and Pat Mates. You're both on the ends. You both did. So, if you're a Butler College of Education student, can you stand? We are thrilled to have you here. And I understand that you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. You are very, very good. I understand that you are planning to be elementary teachers. Some of you are elementary and special education licensed. So just really thrilled to welcome you to what we feel is the best profession in the world, where you can absolutely impact.
We need all of those in Perry Township.
Pat Mates is going to give you an offer.
You're looking to stay in the Indianapolis area, great school district. I think you should look at it.
There's your pitch. If he throws out a job offer, we'll just sign the contracts right here. Although Scott Bess might arm wrestle you a little bit. But I also want to recognize a couple of people who help lead the College of Education. Dr. Major, if you could stand, as Assistant Dean at Butler College of Education, and then Dr. Pangan, Professor at the College of Education. Again, we are so appreciative, so thankful you are here. And you were about to clap. Let's clap for them, too. Yeah. So a few other updates. We know that last week we had actually the first winter storm that impacted our entire state in many years. So from the tip of southern Indiana was covered in ice all the way to our north. I really want to give a shout out to all of the team, including maintenance, custodians, etc., who clear all of the parking lots and sidewalks so that we can get students back safely when possible. For all the teachers who immediately converted to e-learning, although I did see a few official snow days for some school districts out there on Friday. And just all the administrators and team members as well. You know, it's never an easy call to make when you call a snow day. With a massive winter storm coming in, it was a little bit more clear, but just really appreciate the whole team that it takes to make those decisions and to keep things moving when winter storms like that hit or other situations happen. Last month, I shared with the board, we had first week of January was in, so I shared with you the in-person numbers and the virtual due to COVID numbers. As a board, that's really important to us. We know the value of in-person instruction. So I'd like to share those updated numbers with you again. Right after our meeting, we started to hit a peak with the Omicron variant. So we saw the peak in Indiana at the second and third week of January with between a 6 and 7% virtual due to COVID rate. Fortunately, it peaked, and it has since gone back down significantly. So January, we had about 5% who are virtual due to COVID, and again, that has peaked. It is going back down now, and compliments to all of our schools who are keeping students in person in Indiana. It's really incredible. Again, we've talked about this, but when you speak with other states, I mean, Indiana just continues to do a great job keeping students in person, so thank you. Other thing I wanted to make sure you saw is the ESSER spending dashboard that was launched last week. That is probably the first of about, if on the phone, we can hear a lot of paper moving. If you can hit mute if you're on the phone, that would be super. or no, they're not moving. It's either muted or we, thank you very much on the phone. But the ESSER spending dashboard, that just shows exactly where every school, corp is, charter school is in the state of Indiana based on the various federal dollars that we have flowing in, including gear, including the various ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So that was the first iteration that was launched, and I don't think I've fully got this statement out. We're probably one of the first of 5 states in our country who have something like this. This was the first iteration. The second iteration will have a few more features, and then we also seek to really work on understanding return on investment for these dollars, and supporting students or supporting schools and sharing their story about how they're spending these dollars. Huge compliment to Ron Sandlin. I know you've worked on this. Courtney Scaffsma has worked on this. Tracy Brown and Dr. John Keller have worked to launch that. So really appreciate their work there. If you have not seen that, please take a look. We also released our pupil enrollment numbers. So enrollment in Indiana's public and accredited non-public schools has grown to 1.12 million students, a modest increase from the previous school year. We saw growing enrollment across all school types, a 5.25% increase in kindergarten enrollment. So really proud of, again, all of our schools to see enrollment going up. I've mentioned to you that we are really laying the groundwork for some work in literacy, science of reading, and STEM. We have an RFP that is out right now, and I'm told by the team not to say too much so I don't accidentally disqualify an applicant. But we will have Dr. Flores and some of our academic team here next month to share about some of the work in that space. So that's coming. The other thing that we have today is another update on Indiana GPS. This will be our winter update, so more to come there. Any board member comments and reports other than Pat Mapes trying to recruit all of the teachers in this room?
I have a couple comments. First of all, we're not only glad that you're here, we're more glad that you've chosen education as a profession. And it kind of leads into the topic of what happens legislatively and across the street, and some of the bills that are out there that maybe doesn't do the best to promote education. You're going to be hired by a school district that is going to entrust you with the most precious commodity they have in their township or their school district, their children. And you have a requirement and a duty to teach state standards. And you need to remember that each and every day that you're in this profession, that it's about growing kids. It's not about adults, it's not about legislators, it's about doing the right things for your community standards to educate children. As I said, there's a lot of bills about education right now that people who are in the trenches don't support. We can only hope that they listen to school leaders, state superintendent, and make the choices that are necessary for us to continue to support our students. It's very difficult for every kind of district at times to get parents involved in schools, but we have elected local school board officials and on local boards, whether you're a private or charter, that people can bring their concerns to, and we don't need to legislate things in order to run our schools. And so from my seat, that is something of concern. From your seat, realize that when you get employed, your school district is going to do everything they can to support you, to keep you informed, and make certain that you serve their students. One other thing that I hope to get an answer from the department, and I'm sorry to bring this just today, but you sparked a thought.
Sparked a thought.
Offering iRead 3 to 2nd grade kids.
Yes.
Not real sure why we're doing that. The test was made for a 3rd grade kind of exit for literacy. Our township did not choose to opt in, basically because I wouldn't let them. because I don't feel that the test was made to start measuring second grade kids, even though we know we have second grade kids who can pass the test. We're doing dyslexia testing with second grade kids. We're doing M-class testing. I just didn't want to add another test when we're looking to reduce the number of tests that we have. So maybe when the team comes next month,
Yep.
they can explain that to us about why we've added that.
Yep, that's exactly what they'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments or reports? Okay, seeing none. Public comment, we have one, John O'Neill from ISTA.
Thank you, Dr. Jenner and board members. John O'Neill with the Indiana State Teachers Association. We just have a few comments about the dashboard and appreciate all the feedback and opportunities for input that you've allowed ISTA and our members to really get that educator voice into this. And so I just have a few recommendations or suggestions to make. Some of which are technical in nature or in terms of the presentation of this when it goes live later this fall. So ISTA does support this concept of moving away from overly simplistic letter grades alone for school accountability and presenting this broader dashboard that encompasses a wider scope of factors that impact student learning. Our association has several recommendations as this dashboard begins implementation, including the following. For longitudinal data, school dashboards at the local level should include growth so that all students can demonstrate improvement regardless of their starting point. Any comparisons available on these local dashboards, such as district to district, school to district, district to state, etc., should present information clearly and fairly. We believe schools should be compared to other like schools with similar demographic composition so that the data paint an accurate picture. And then sort of a technical point from our meeting last week, the quick view or landing page, whatever terms you're using, we believe should be presented first for internal district data, and then any comparisons to other districts or the state should be, a separate tab or some sort of click where it's not the first thing parents see, because, the focus really should be on the district itself, and we understand the use of comparisons, but just noting that issue. All of the data presented should be clearly defined, accurate, and user-friendly so parents can fully understand their characteristics of the school and district where they are. And then a couple of plugs here. ISTA continues to advocate for multiple measures, as we've said, I think, a number of times now on this dashboard. And we like leaving open the flexibility of including things at the local district level, like class size, teacher retention rates, salary information, and then additional district supports and resources, things of that nature. We also maintain our opposition to the post-grad outcomes that tie schools to numerous decisions and factors outside of school control once they leave. And I know we've had this debate for several years now. And if, some of the information on the dashboard could be helpful, but we, philosophically have a problem with the post-grad outcome piece.
And John, that's in law.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
But I noted your point. Thank you.
Sure. And then finally, we, have continued to oppose the over-reliance on standardized tests that bases kids, grades kids largely on zip code. And we know that's also state law, and I know there's some discussions about further changes coming to the state test. So we'll follow that this legislative session as well. But again, thank you, and appreciate the work you're doing and continuing to engage us, and we look forward to still being part of that conversation as it becomes implemented over the next few months. So
Thank
you.
Really appreciate your thought, John. Sure. Any questions from board members? Thank you. On that note, if Ron Sandlin could come forward, we're going to actually dig into some of the design potentials and the potential experience.
Consent agenda.
You know what? Can you just stand there? Because we'll move
Right
this
here.
pretty quickly.
I'm playing it
Thank
off.
you.
I'm shuffling my papers.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
If I could, and I visited with Chad about this, and I'm bringing this up because I had a question, forgot to ask it with other, we talked on the phone several times, but I didn't get this question asked, and then I got asked a couple times as I was coming in here, and Chad said we could certainly do this, but I want to make it public so those people that were asking the question, could we get a report next meeting on the special education data? It has nothing, it affects nothing that we're doing here, but if we could get, because I do think it's interesting that, for example, developmental delay for ages 5 through 8 increased by 1,956 students, where some of the other areas were much small, and there were some that stood out, like in other health impairments, 742, and again, I think it probably is interesting data, but I think, you know me, I always want a story, and I don't want my mind to go to why, because my mind immediately went on developmental delay. Well, is that because of COVID and all the things there? Well, I don't know that, and I don't want to make some causality in my mind. And since had I not been asked by a couple of other people, I probably wouldn't. So I visited with Chad, and he said it was okay to bring it up, and we could do it, but I wanted to publicly bring that up for those that were asking the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And several board members did ask that question. It's a very fair question. And so for those in the audience, we had developmental delay, about 7,800 students in the 2020 count. And then this past count, December 2021, it jumped about 2,000 students. So Brian or Chad, do you want to say anything initially? Because there is some reason as to why that happened, and then we can bring back more information next time. For those who don't attend next meeting, we'll give you a little bit about why that happened and then more to come.
Yeah, I think that the short of it is the definition for developmental delay was expanded in terms of the age range, and so we've seen the numbers increase since that happened a few years back. That's the short of it. But,
Okay.
And we can connect you with our special ed team too directly to talk through that.
Thank you.
And I can add to that. Can you hear me? It used to be up until 6 years old. Now it's been expanded till 9. So a lot more students fit into that category now than they used to.
Great point. Thank you for the question. Any other discussion on consent agenda? I think we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So now we are officially to hear a little bit more about Indiana GPS dashboard.
Thanks a ton, Dr. Jenner. So we'll be brief today, give a quick update on some more robust conversations we're having with several groups of stakeholders and we'll continue to have through the month of February and into March. I want to reiterate what Mr. O'Neill shared. You know, ISTA, along with others, have really been a great partner providing genuine, productive input throughout this process. And while, you know, final decisions might not 100% align with any stakeholder group, what I have experienced is a genuineness and a very productive approach to getting this right. And at the end of the day, I think that's when we know that we're doing this well. And so thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for your continued collaboration and your members as well at ISTA for their participation. So I'll level set briefly for folks who haven't been following the conversation, but then we'll quickly get into some dashboard design features that we want to share not only with the board, but also publicly as an update on this process. So as you all know, the dashboard was required in Indiana statute. But before diving into just picking indicators, the Department of Education was strategic in defining what we're looking for out of our Hoosier graduates, what it means to be a graduate prepared to succeed in the state of Indiana, and then leveraging that vision, that profile, to then guide and inform the selection of indicators. So we identified and elevated 5 characteristics because we had to prioritize some. We can't do everything all at once. That conversation then led into more robust stakeholder engagement around what are we going to measure? What are those key benchmarks along the PK through 12 and beyond continuum that are going to give us relevant, actionable information so that we can make sure that throughout the student's entire K-12 experience, they are on track. And if they are not on track, they are targeted with supports to ensure that they graduate prepared to succeed. So we identified K-8 indicators that are on your screen, as well as a set of 9 through 12 indicators. And as you will see, these indicators really expand beyond the traditional test-based measures of school performance into more skills-based, and some are aspirational, and we'll talk about a timeline later on where we'll go through what indicators we plan to have in the fall at a high level, and we'll provide more information later on. And what work needs to be done to make sure that we build out those aspirational indicators. So that's the level set. So with that, I'm going to transition into the new information for today, which is how we're thinking about dashboard design. And so one thing Dr. Jenner has really led our team to pursue is a first of its kind 21st century experience with a school performance dashboard. I hate to quote, our meetings at the department that I have with Dr. Jenner, but I will do this one time.
I have no idea what's coming, so I'm kind of nervous, but go
This
ahead. What
this
is it?
can't look like it was built in the 90s.
Yeah, I did say that.
And
That's true.
just short and sweet.
Yeah.
And so we've intentionally designed, preliminarily, a structure that will ensure that we provide users a 21st century experience that's accessible and feels new and clean and invites people into the data versus something that is really standoffish and kind of industrial and antiquated. So that starts with a landing page. And so what's unique to our approach is instead of diving straight into what most folks would traditionally think as a school performance dashboard, we're intentionally taking time to design a landing page that really is meant to signal our overall goals and progress as it relates to GPS, to prioritize a snapshot, super high level of the entire continuum, PK through 12 and beyond, at the state and the district level, because we know districts are where all of that data is going to exist versus the individual school. And most importantly, I think, equip school leaders and community leaders with a tool they can use to tell their story. So it is intentionally designed as a tool to tell a story versus the traditional sense of a dashboard, which is go in and kind of make judgments or evaluate the overall performance of a school. Below the landing page is what we're calling our school summary page. This data will be at the district and school level, and it will provide that traditional dashboard experience, although we want it to feel far more contemporary, with the goal of illustrating performance across all of the headline indicators and providing the user an opportunity to make whatever judgment or answer whatever question they are coming with within 10 seconds. So this is high-level snapshot data of a school that gets a little bit more into overall performance and also provides an entry point to deeper analysis, which leads to our drill down or informational pages, which are going to be for our more savvy data users and users that are coming to the dashboard with a very specific question to answer. I want to know about this thing at these schools over this time period, right? And so we hope to make that as customizable and dynamic as possible, but we also are balancing that as we customize and make more dynamic, we then sometimes exclude users who might not be as familiar with educational data. So we're balancing those. So that's the layers as we're processing them. Now I'm going to get into some inspiration and some examples. And so please stop me if you have any questions as we go. The first example I'm going to show you, before I show it, I'm going to be very clear, is pulled from an organization called the Strive Network. So it is not our landing page, but it is serving as inspiration for our landing page. So if you recall, we talked about a tool to tell stories. Ability to show the entire continuum in a very accessible format that might not give you the specific information that you're looking for, but really signals what we're trying to do as a state. And so the data included on this example, because we pulled it from another organization, does not match our data. I want to be very clear. These are not our indicators. This is meant to serve as an inspiration for our work and give kind of a picture of what we're striving for there. Lack of, no pun intended, strive network.
And one of the things, pausing there,
Yes,
that
please.
we heard very clearly in the focus groups we've had so far is, again, to show the full continuum and tell the story, which you emphasized a couple of times. So this sort of format, when we talked to you as board members, was added. I think, Kristen, you were the only one. The rest were already completed when we added this one. But we'll be seeking feedback from you as well on your thoughts and how we can show that full continuum story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jenner, for that. And I think I'll close with this to say, when you look up and Google a school performance dashboard in any other state, they don't look like this traditionally. They jump straight into the more traditional. So we're really trying to lead the way in this policy and goal signaling tool that can be used as a storytelling tool than what's traditionally been thought of as dashboards, which is really just a way to go in and analyze performance. So then the next layer, and a couple examples, one is a newer update. It's hard to see on the screen here, but I'll illustrate or narrate what's on the screen. This is from Enroll Indy. So again, not our tool here, but an inspiration for something that we're considering and have received a lot of positive feedback on, which is allowing schools to highlight some of the programs and offerings they have. So in this particular example, you see academic programs. So that's where an opportunity for schools to share one-to-one. Are they one-to-one with devices and students? Do they offer AP as a high school? Do they offer algebra in the middle school? Arts, media, and music, so the fine arts, what opportunities exist there? Clubs, community partnerships, any family involvement programs or opportunities, and then sports that are offered. And so obviously, we would have to create some type of rules for each of these, but we would try to be as flexible as possible to ensure that schools are able to present what they are offering to complement the data on a separate page. Dr. Mapes.
Will you work with like Skyward and Power School that would be able to import that data into that dashboard so we don't have double entries, as we already keep track of those in the student information systems?
Well, we certainly will now. We'll at least investigate that opportunity. And I think we haven't actually shopped this from a technical aspect,
Yeah.
so I'm glad you shared that, and we will intentionally shop this from a technical aspect to make sure that we don't unintentionally run into those duplicative reporting requirements. I was unaware that Power School kind of kept that information, so if it does.
Does Power School keep, this is a question even when we think about the indicators we selected, like the desire to understand if students are involved in co-curriculars, and which really matter for skill development. Does
You can
Power
go in and click and say what a kid's involved in, and then you can run a list
Okay.
for your teams or your club or whatever organization
So
you
Johnny
have.
is in the Rocket Club.
Yeah.
Sarah's
do
in
that.
Commuters Hub. Yeah, I wonder, well, that would be incredible, because I wonder how many, we can work with the SIS companies, but I wonder how many schools use that feature. That's another thing we'll have to dig into. But good thought there.
Yeah. And I would also flag briefly, we know and believe and trust that schools are posting this information on their websites. But what this creates is a universally designed approach, and we would love to then provide direct access from this page to a school's website. But basically, this just levels the playing field, so all schools' information looks the same versus how different websites would structure and design, making it easier on the consumer to find that information.
The other thing, Ron, you may have mentioned this, and even if we do have a potential import option from an SIS, this will be something that the school will need to update. This is not something that we as a state will update, right, on behalf of a school. So it would be customizable.
That's why I don't want a double entry.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want it to be a burden, or otherwise it won't get done.
sure.
Or some will do it and some won't, and now all of
Yeah.
a sudden we have gaps in our information. We're trying to be transparent, but the burden
I
has
mean,
created.
you
yeah.
look at our high school, you look at sports and activities, that's gonna be
Laundry list.
75 to 100. I mean, when you look at clubs and non-sanctioned sports plus IHSA type sports, boys and girls,
Yeah,
those are gonna be large fields.
Yep.
good, thank you.
So the next example I'll flag, and I want to caveat this one very intentionally. This is a wireframe of our first iteration of Indiana GPS's school summary page. But we are collecting feedback on this right now. This is not set in stone. It actually doesn't even function at this point. This is all we have is a static wireframe to generate conversation. And so I want to be very clear that the purpose of what we're going to view next is to generate conversation and feedback, not as a final product. I want to be very clear on that. So as we transition, we, for the first time, really publicly present our thoughts on what a school summary page can look like. And as we've talked about, our design principles here, our goals, accessible to multiple users, right? We know that community members, parents and guardians, as well as school officials, teachers, school leaders, district administrators are going to access this for different purposes. And so we want to make sure that it's dynamic enough to allow for that. We also want to make sure that it's intentionally designed so that any user can make an analysis, whatever analysis they are attempting to make within 10 seconds. And so that's where you get the signaling of the colors across the indicators. And again, this is a high school example. While we finalize each indicator, the school summary page will include all of the headline indicators that apply to the grades served at a particular school. And we will also be able to elevate this up to the district level as well. And so I'm not going to go through all the features here. I'm going to actually highlight them when we get to our feedback, because we've gotten a lot of great feedback on this slide particular, because it is kind of our first iteration of what's going on in our brains at the department as we think about the Indiana GPS dashboard.
Would you look at moving rigorous coursework down to how well are students prepared to succeed? And then maybe have a growth item up there to replace it?
I think all of and stop me on this one, I think the part of the build of this wireframe is all of this is still very much.
I want student growth in there somewhere. I like proficiency, but I want to see student growth. And I'm more concerned about the student growth in the elementary and middle school.
Yep.
I realize when it comes to high school, it's course completion, rigor, and those things. But when we're looking at kids K through 8, I want to know how we're growing them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that caveat because I was.
High school course completion and credits and those things are what's
That's going to
important.
track that progress.
Yeah, but looking at other levels, I don't want us to forget growth.
Growth,
And I think to that point, and you're probably going there too, Ron, this wireframe is a high school wireframe. We'll also need to build out an elementary and a middle school, maybe even an early learning wireframe. Some of the focus group questions of which you all were included, but for people watching, some of what we're really interested in is the value of, and you're going to get to this. I'm not going to steal your thunder, Ron, I promise, but
it's your thunder.
The value of color. People really liked the ability to see it quickly. Again, 10 seconds. What is working? What is not? A lot of feedback on the interactive map and being to compare with like schools. Could be like schools right in a county, right around you. Could be that there's a principal to our east who was all about big competitive guy, kind of like you, Pat, competitive. He wants to be the best in the state. I love it. But he wants to compare with all like schools across the state to see what they're doing, if they're really succeeding. Other thing we're looking at is the value when we tell the data story, the questions. Is it helpful to have the question? It was interesting. Some saw the questions immediately. You, Kristen, you saw the question pretty quickly. Others didn't see the questions at all, right? So it's just kind of how we look at data. The badging, I don't want to go too far down the lane.
I'm not going any further than I've already gone, except one clarification for Dr. Bates.
Okay.
It's all you.
The potential for badging, and again, you're in the audience, you can't see this. We'll publish all this online. You can take a closer look. Certainly be interested in your feedback. But if a school's really excelling with diploma strength for low-income students, let's put that out there. Let's really note it. So a lot of different feedback on this wireframe, and this will cause us to as we build the elementary and middle to really think through that. But noted on the growth, definitely needs to be in there.
And I just wanted to clearly articulate that student growth grades 3 through 8 is a headline indicator, and as a result, will be included in the elementary and middle
Yep.
school dashboard. So next, just a couple examples of some of the informational features that we're looking to include, just to, again, create some conversation. So we'll first look at, does it not let you click on it? There we go. We'll first look at an example from the state of Kentucky, which if you scroll down, they've built out a tool that allows the user to easily compare same students, where they entered in kindergarten based on a kindergarten assessment of kindergarten readiness, and then track those students to 3rd grade to see where they've landed, either in 3rd grade math or 3rd grade literacy, right? So not to get caught up in what tools they're using to measure those things, because that's not as important as really the ability to cross-tab and pull actionable information about what's going on in schools. We often hear, and Dr. Mapes, you talked about this, right? And so did Mr. O'Neill. You know, schools that take students as they walk through their door and move them forward along that learning trajectory in a very substantive, measurable way, that is a positive outcome for kids that has historically, we've started measuring it with growth, but really the focus has been on proficiency since 2001 in NCLB. We've not effectively captured and elevated, I think as intently or as purposefully as we could. This type of visualization, we believe, and we're receiving feedback, is hyper actionable and also can be really valuable in communicating the impact of a school on the students that they serve. So again, props to Kentucky. I want to give credit where credit's due. And this is also a signal that we're scouring the country and even globally, to be honest, as we investigate different data visualizations that exist beyond education to find what's best for the state of Indiana. So this is quickly to highlight. Dr. Jenner, did you want to say anything about this?
Got a lot of interesting feedback on this. A lot of the debate is around, does this go on a landing page? Or not a landing page, excuse me, a school summary page for one of the indicators, to share what's the impact of if a student can't read by 3rd grade on diploma stream. Yep. Does it make sense to go on the school summary page, or do we put that in that 3rd layer, that more advanced layer? So I think a lot of discussion there, but we got a lot of positive comments about this. Maybe the only other thing that we also heard is Kentucky has, and the data appears to be really, really high level. It doesn't allow you to get into the weeds. But we did hear some conversation about the value of having some signaling at the county level. So they have like gradient colors based on some of their kindergarten readiness data. So again, a lot of good feedback.
Not knowing anything about Kentucky, do they have county school boards, school districts?
Some. They have quite a few county, but they have quite a few that are similar to us, especially if you get into northern Kentucky. Very, very.
District lines and
multiple school
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dr. Mapes, and it's not as I think broken up as ours, but yeah, they definitely have like township school boards and things like that within a larger county school
And
corporation.
if you think about our whole mission and who might look at this site, I mean, we could have hopefully community leaders who take a look at this, and so the county. In Indiana, we have a few counties that are only, Jay County as an example. But something like this would still, any non-public school would be a part of that data, but it would give you a full picture of what that county might look like. So just something to consider.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think this is such a great example of how we're thinking about this dashboard in a way that goes beyond just educators and parents. There's a lot of nonprofit community organizations that are really leaning in the pre-K space. And so allowing access to features like this will allow those entities to monitor the impact of their programming in partnership with the school and really activate, and that's a really important word that we use a lot, activate some robust conversations about shared investments in the development of our children. There are so many great people working in this space, and I think that we have a great opportunity to provide an overarching through line that really activates all of those people in a unified and cohesive way. So if you want to scroll down, this is New York City, and I think just overall the feel is really the feel that we're probably looking for around the drill down pages. But one feature that stuck out to us in particular as we think about the importance of different student populations or different geographical locations are tables that kind of illustrate the school's performance on multiple indicators over multiple years. Apologies for the folks in the audience, it's hard to read here. But then some kind of snapshot comparisons to relevant comparison groups. And again, putting this on a drill down page, back to Mr. O'Neill's point, ensures that if somebody's looking to answer this question, they can get here easily. But we may not lead with it, and again, that decision hasn't been made yet, but we may not lead with it because not only is this a lot of data, it quickly jumps into comparisons when our goal may be to really look at an individual school first and really signal how is your school doing for your students or the schools that your students are going to attend. So those are all the things that we're hearing from our stakeholders. So Chad, if you want to flip back, it'll be just another tab in this screen. Thank you, sir. And so that gets us to our final slide, which is summary of, no, you don't need to do the last one, we're good. Thank you.
Do you want to go to New Mexico?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No New Mexico, you're out.
Yeah, it's on there. Feel free to look at it, folks. There's one small feature that I think we look at, but
Okay.
we're good. So I wanted to quickly summarize the dashboard feedback that we received so far. There's a more detailed explanation on your screen. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to share from the heart in my notes. The first is be intentional. And this has really stuck out to our team. The features we choose and the features with which we lead will influence how users use and feel about the dashboard, how users use the dashboard and how they feel about the dashboard. So it's important that we constantly think and evaluate. Something might be really neat and really cool, but does it align to the goals and the purpose of the dashboard? Is it going to further our mission for creating the dashboard in the first place? And that's how intentional we need to be when selecting features and tools at the different levels. It doesn't mean it can't be on there, just where it lands. The second is be hyper vigilant about accessibility. And while it's hard to create a tool for one user at the state level, and our goal is to have one tool, we are being, and are receiving feedback that we need to be hyper vigilant about the different users and build features to make sure that every single user that we can think of, right, at a high level, the most prominent users, let's say, have an entry point into the information, and then also can get to the information that's most valuable for them. And then lastly, as much as possible, be customizable. And this really gets into the place where folks are coming to this information with specific questions. And right now, the Department of Education posts online a series of Excel spreadsheets that can probably answer any question that anybody wants, and if it doesn't, they can request the data from us. The labor and time and expertise that going through that process takes excludes a lot of folks, and I would posit the average Hoosier from that information. And so we need to make sure that this dashboard presents information in a customizable way that allows more people to access the more nuanced data features that we have at the state. We have the information. This is not new information. We have it. We're just, for the first time, I think, really thinking strategically about organizing it in a way that activates folks and empowers folks versus serves as just the terminal endpoint. The state reports the data, and we're done. And lastly, I'll flag briefly, you see across the bottom, I won't read them, but all the folks that we've talked to and will continue to talk through the end of this month and into March. Which
I
then
think last month I read a long list of all the participants who have supported and helped. We'll do that later on, but we can't echo that enough. We appreciate all of the engagement in this process.
Genuine and productive. Two words that are just like every time we're in one of these conversations, I'm like, wow, this is a really genuine conversation and a very productive conversation, which is so appreciated. So you've seen this slide before, but just to level set with everyone around next steps. Obviously, this is the winter update where we did dashboard design. I will say we are still actively working on the individual indicator rules and specifications, not prepared to provide any concrete update today, but in the spring, as you see, we're working on finalizing those at that point. So in the spring, we'll provide an update on the indicators that are available in the fall. As we know, some are aspirational. We'll provide an update on the rules and specifications, how we will measure things like ninth grade on track, because there are options in that design. How we will measure things like credit accumulation. There are options that favor different policy goals. So we'll work through that with our policy goals in mind, of course, and provide an update in the spring. And we are still on track. It is a very aggressive, and our Chief Technology Officer reminds us daily that this is an aggressive timeline, and we need to continue be focused on getting the dashboard created. But we are still on track and committed to meeting that fall deadline of having the first iteration of the dashboard, the school performance dashboard, aligned to Indiana GPS, using data from most recently the 21-2022 school year. And so that concludes our update for today, and I'm happy to answer any general questions, or if you want any additional information based on the information I shared, please let me know.
Yeah.
Just a comment. First of all, I mean, kudos to the team. You guys have done an amazing job of outreach and talking to a lot of people. It takes time and effort, and it's easy to kind of sit and design it and say, here it is, and you guys have done an amazing job. I want to talk about what's not on here, and that is one of, I think all of our overarching things is to make sure that parents especially have the information they need to select the right place for their student, right? And good news in this state, we have essentially universal school choice, right? If you don't like this school, you can go to that school. Doesn't matter what type, what region, almost everybody has a choice. But the interesting thing, and again, if you look at the school transfer report, which again, thanks to the department for putting that out, you see we have thousands of students who are moving from one place to another, right? And again, we have people who now are making choices. But we also have a lot of students who are not making choices. And a lot of that is because parents don't know, A, that they can make a choice, or B, what's good, right? And we have data out there now. We got Excel spreadsheets, we have InView, but the parents who are not making the choices don't have a time, capacity, whatever it is, to go dig into that. And so, like, this is wonderful, and like all of us will dive into this, and we'll love it, and we'll, like all the education policy wonks, will all jump up and down. But I think start thinking about the implementation of this, and how do you make this not just accessible, right? Because it's going to be on the DOE website, it's going to be a big button, and you can push it and get there. But how do I, if I'm a parent, especially if I'm a low-income parent, and I don't go to the DOE website on a regular basis, right? I don't even go to my school's website on a regular, all I know is school starts on this date and my kid gets on a bus and they go there. How do we make this information front and center for them? What organizations are we gonna work with to make sure that this stuff gets disseminated to them? Because the most important thing is, while there's a school, I would say, I think it's fact, right? Most schools serve most students extraordinarily well. But parents aren't interested in most students, they're interested in their student. I wanna know what schools serve my student extraordinarily well. And I think that's, so the next step of this to me is getting that information out in front of people and accessible to them. And again, just that they know it exists and that they can use it, right? And it's, again, I think the design is extraordinarily well done. Again, I wanna be able to see something quickly and I don't have to be a Excel, that's really well done. But I want us to start thinking about how are we going to get this in front of people so they know it's there and they can use it. And you may be all over that. I just wanted to get that out there.
So a couple of things I heard you say in that is the communication of this. And this won't surprise the room, I don't think. But, we've put out so many communications on Indiana GPS as a state board of ed, as a department. Media's covered it. Speaking events weekly around the state, regionally. All the things social media. And, I mean, we're in a news overload society where some people put it down. I think it's good for all of us to put it down every now and then. But we still have people out in our state who don't yet know that we're moving on this as a board. So I think great point, anything that we can do to make sure it is very well communicated. We're gonna need to certainly lead on, and I think somebody already mentioned this, but community partners. We always talk about schools can't do this work alone. And also, it's a whole community that surrounds a child and their learning. And so we'll need to lean on them, but always glad to have that conversation as we continue to push on this. The other thing I heard you say is the emphasis on the various audiences. So if it's a parent, and we heard this quite a bit in the focus groups. So we even had educators who came in and they looked at it not through the educator lens, but through the lens of the parent first, and gave really sound feedback on, well, if I'm a parent, this is what I want to see right out of the gate. So that's something that we're going to have to think through in terms of the build. I think almost certainly we'd like to collect some sort of, our current site doesn't, the past sites we've had as a state, we have no idea the user who's coming to look at the data. And that can really show what we display and how we display. And so are you coming as a parent? Are you coming? I think we talked about this, Byron, you mentioned this point. And Erica, are you coming as a parent? Are you coming as a community leader? And what are you clicking on first? So some of better understanding that too. And Ron, once we have the build out, I know you've talked about, we are going, that's going to be another round of focus groups where we'll have various audiences clicking through to provide feedback. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it was in my notes and I missed that point. I would say that to distinguish that from the conversations that are happening now, that's like user testing. And so user testing will be a critical component before this dashboard is launched in the fall. That is a unique stage versus what we're having now, which are very high level design principle conversations, right? As you're designing this, think about X. That way we don't get to the user experience with something that is so off on the third rail that we really can't get this thing back on the tracks in time. So yes, I appreciate that, Dr. Jenners, and my points, and I did forget to mention that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We're yet another step into this. So really appreciate the board and your willingness to think through this, and of course all the contributors. Thank you, Ron. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second. Aye.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, boy, Byron.
I want to be consistent. I do that every time.